Every day Donny thinks about ancient Rome. Ponders the topic though Korea's his home. He'd love to go back to watch gladiators fight. Just like Hogan and Andre, we battled tonight. Gladiators and pro wrestling, it's our lust for blood we're expressing. Gladiators and pro wrestling, violence is fun, don't be stressing. Rome is just a retarded USA. Donny can use that word, it's okay. Randy knows sports, but does he know ancient Rome? Or about the most violent sport ever known? Gladiators and pro wrestling, it's our lust for blood we're expressing. Gladiators and pro wrestling, violence is fun, don't be stressing. Sit back, relax, watch some brutality. A wholesome time for the whole family. Don't be squeamish, this shit's not even real. They're not real people, they barely can feel.
So what'd you think, Randy?
I was okay until the trash can wrestling bits, you know.
Oh, the hardcore wrestling bits?
Yeah, GCW stuff. Yeah, I just don't get it.
Yeah, Randy hates that shit, guys. Randy hates that hardcore shit.
No, I wouldn't say I hate the hardcore stuff because I love ECW, but that's not even the level of what them guys do.
So for non-wrestling fans, I'll break it down like this. Pro wrestling in some ways is a lot like porn. Oh, there's the regular vanilla porn, but then there's all that weird BDSM crap, right?
Yeah.
Regular vanilla porn is like regular vanilla wrestling. You got like WWE, ECW, or not ECW, AEW.
Yeah.
Well, ECW would have been there, right?
Yeah, at one time.
But then you got that hardcore shit, that weird like chains and barbed wire shit. That fucking freaky deaky shit, like the BDSM, like weird stuff.
Don't get me wrong. In the old days, they did barbed wire matches. I mean, where the ropes, you had different barbed wire matches. You had barbed wire matches where the ropes were wrapped in barbed wire. Then you had matches where the ropes were barbed wire. It was literally a barbed wire fence around the ring.
Yeah, you had that crazy shit.
Yeah. I mean, they won't, to this day, I don't think they even ever showed the full Bruiser Brody Terry Gordy barbed wire match from Texas Stadium back in '86.
My favorite shit though was the hardcore Japanese stuff.
Oh,
the Japanese, like just like porn.
Yeah,
the Japanese also do pro wrestling the best.
Yeah, yeah, they do. They're right up there. They really are. I agree.
For non-wrestling fans, if you don't know, there was once a hardcore Japanese wrestling match.
Yep.
Where the loser got dunked in a tank of live piranhas, and they were actual piranhas.
Yeah,
I mean the piranhas obviously didn't know what the fuck was going on.
No,
so when they finally dunked that pro wrestler in there, all the fish were swinging around like what?
Yeah,
it was kind of funny actually.
Unless they smelled that blood. So
yeah.
Well, and you know, the exploding ring ones, you know, that Mick Foley was.
Oh yeah, the ones where the rings explode. Yeah.
Oh, I mean that stuff was insane back then. You know, I mean they try to. They don't even try and do it now. I mean there are some that do. FMW. I mean FMW. Think that those guys were. He tried to create the difference. I can't even remember the dude's name, but he tried to create that bridge of actual martial arts and pro wrestling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for the death match type stuff, yeah, it worked okay, but for regular matches and regular shows, it just didn't work. I mean, you just can't sustain it. People get hurt too easily.
People got hurt all the times. Like, man, I was watching one CZW event where, yeah, they had the ambulance there waiting, and people got hurt. It was bad.
Yeah.
It was just like so senseless and gratuitous. Anyway, speaking of senseless and gratuitous.
Yes.
So tonight's topic. Okay. So I am a fan of history. I think you are too.
Oh yeah. I'm a big historian.
Okay. See, here's a little backstory on me, guys. My first introduction into podcasts, right? Into this whole like medium of communication even really started with like history podcasts. It wasn't paranormal stuff, right?
Yeah.
I originally got into podcasts through it was originally Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Because I would listen to Joe Rogan from day one, right? But then through Joe Rogan, I got into like hardcore history.
Yeah.
And then a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight actually stems from this guy's podcast, History on Fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Daniele
History on
Bolelli.
Fire is great.
Dude, did you listen to his podcast series on Gladiators?
No, I did not.
Dude,
Actually,
it was fucking a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight.
4 episodes in that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, dude. You gotta give it a listen. Next time you're on a long car ride, pop that motherfucker in.
Yeah, damn right, I will. Because he's ingenious. I mean, between him and there's another guy that does the Sad History of guy.
Yeah,
that guy. I love both of them. They do great stuff.
But this guy's from Italy. Like he's got a straight up Italian accent, so you know he knows his Roman history.
He should, yeah.
This guy's a motherfucking history professor, right?
Yeah.
And dude, he breaks down Romans, like all the misconception, like not the Romans. He's talking about gladiators. He breaks down gladiators like so matter of factly, like this is what they were really about.
Yeah.
This is what it was actually like. This is what we know and what we don't know.
Yep.
Right. Listening to that entire series, I couldn't help but piece together, make the comparison, right? Because when you think of gladiators, most people think what? They take a bunch of slaves, because Romans are assholes, right? So they make a bunch of slaves fight to the death for people's entertainment, right?
Yeah.
And you'll notice there'll be a lot of people who think about that, and they think back on the Romans. They think, oh man, those guys were assholes.
Yeah.
They were a bunch of brutal ass motherfuckers. I mean, they kept slaves.
Yeah.
What kind of evil people do that, Randy? Keep slaves.
The Southerners in the U.S. prior to 1865. Yeah.
So
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not near what you're talking about. Like they didn't. Well, I can't say that they didn't treat them like they would the gladiators back at that time, but it's just it is what it is.
It's interesting though because a few years back I was on a podcast before I met you guys, and the lady I was doing the show with, we were talking about slavery, right? Because her whole thing was she was always like she was very what's the word? She would get very emotional about it. White lady, by the way.
Yeah.
But she'd be like, oh, it was so wrong. How could they just buy and sell a person like that and treat them like property? Never again, Randy. Never again will this ever happen. Should this ever happen? Rob the people of their dignity, Randy. And, this was the whole show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they also had slavery pretty much in like all of human fucking history.
Yeah.
And so she asked
about
me,
1865.
Yeah, so then I brought up like slavery in ancient Rome.
Yeah.
And how the whole Roman Empire was basically built on slavery, right?
Well, yeah.
So
same thing quite frankly, it's still going on now in parts of Africa. If they're captured as part of a war tribunal, or whatever, or a wartime area between two tribes, two factions, whatever the case might be, dang good and well, especially not in the bush, spoils. Those people just became this tribe's slave.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. You're not going to get them to stop. You're not going to ever stop it completely. I don't think you can condemn it all you want. I condemn it, obviously, for our reasoning, but to them, that's been their way of life for thousands of years.
Exactly. Because you should have seen this, because when I was explaining that, as a matter of fact, like Roman slavery, she was trying to take those like morals and values from the 20th century and kind of impose it onto Romans. Be like, how could they treat people like that? I'm like, how could they treat people like that? Everyone fucking treated people like that. Like all literally everyone, every fucking civilization at that time, everyone was fucking. If you were not a slave, you had slaves. That was the reality of the ancient world.
I would argue that it was that way up until probably the last 50 years, most likely around the world in a lot of places. Now, they could say slavery, they could say indentured servant, they could say it however they want to say it, but it's still slavery.
Yeah, it still is.
So,
but then I would explain it to her about like the different comparing and contrasting American slavery versus Roman slavery.
Yeah,
because it was pretty different the way.
It was. Yeah, these guys were kidnapped and brought across the pond, and sold here. Or sold across the pond and then brought over here after the fact. But either way, these people were kidnapped. They weren't necessarily taken by force per se. Yeah. They were kidnapped and put forced into slavery by their own people. Right. A lot of them. And then they were sold to the white traders, and they brought them over.
I mean, it is a real question though. Which one was worse? Because that lady and I, we started talking about which one was worse. It's hard. It's really hard to say, because there are ways in which the American, like 400 years ago, slavery was worse in some aspects. For example, the racial component, right? The fact that like if you were of that race, then you were, even if you weren't a slave, if you were in America, you were going to be associated with being a former slave. Like the black race was specifically the race for slaves. The Romans, that was completely foreign to the Romans, because the Romans was just enslave fucking anybody.
Yeah, whoever they beat in battle,
they didn't give a fuck about your race.
You guys, y'all belong to us now.
Asian, black, European, white,
they did not care.
Middle Eastern, they didn't give a fuck. They would enslave your ass.
They did not care.
They enslaved their own people.
You better hope and pray a Roman senator took you in as his personal, because otherwise you're going to be working long and hard.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, sitting there looking at some of the stuff on the side there, like Nemo's talking about the Irish and Sin talking about the Irish, they were essentially, when they came to New York and stuff, a lot of them were indentured servants. The Chinese out in San Francisco, which I'm watching that show Warrior right now. It was on cinema.
Oh, yeah?
I'm in the third
That's
season
my favorite.
now. That dude is a freaking beast. I love that guy. I can't remember what his name is, but either way, I'm like, I'm waiting for him to kick this guy's ass. I'm waiting for him to kick that guy's ass. And then, I'm like, the Irish were out there. The guy that's fighting for the Irish, he's like, they need to be, they're hardworking. They fought for the country. They did this, they did that. They should be in there above the Chinese. I'm cleaning that up. They actually say the words that go along with it for the time frame, obviously. And I'm sitting there watching them, listening to them, like, wait a second, you do realize, I'm thinking that, did they not go back a little bit further and realize that the Irish were the same way as the Chinese are right there? Who do you think built the subways in freaking New York?
Dude, I am so pissed off, Randy, that they canceled that show. I'm so pissed off.
I don't know why they did.
I'm so pissed off. For those of you who are listening who don't know what we're talking about Warrior. It is the show that Bruce Lee had originally written. It was supposed to be Kung Fu, but they gave it to David Carradine. Yeah. Those racist Hollywood fucks.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what happened.
And I like David Carradine. Don't get me wrong.
I like David Carradine too. I don't blame him.
You're right. That was all. It was Bruce Lee's brainchild. The whole bit was all Bruce Lee's brainchild. So, but I'm watching it now. I'm in the third episode of the third season, which third season is the last season. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, now, and don't get me wrong. You've got the Irish that are bad. the whites, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Then you got the Chinese, but you got the Chinese that are just fighting amongst themselves. I'm like, can you guys not see more than 2 feet in front of your face? What the hell's going on around you? You are being manipulated like crazy. And just like the dude that's playing Assam on it, you're like, you're looking at it like he is already. It's after the main fight at the end of season 2, so they had the mural up of him and everything, and you can just see the guys in charge are getting jealous because everybody looks to him like he's the leader, But anyway, so yeah, I mean, but they are essentially indentured servants. Granted, they're making a quote unquote money, but it's the most realistic I'd seen, knowing what I know of history. It's the most realistic I'd seen of what that area was like, how they had to live. You know what I mean?
Now, one of the things that I would say is an argument for the Roman slavery system of slavery being a little bit better for slaves than the American version.
Yeah.
So if you were a slave in Rome, like in the city of Rome, not in the Roman Empire, but actually in Rome, like if you're a domestic slave, they actually lived pretty good lives, man.
Yeah.
They were treated fairly well.
Yeah. Because they took care of their masters.
Well, they took care of their masters. Their masters required, because they would have to do very more complex tasks for them.
Yeah.
Like they would have to like go shopping for them and arrange their household. They would manage their books. So these masters, they really had to like put a lot of trust in these people.
Them, yeah.
And a lot of these slaves, like in the city of Rome itself, they were like loyal. They would like kill for their masters and go to war for their masters.
Because they had a good life. They were taken care of. I mean, but you get outside of Rome, the city of Rome.
City of Rome, yeah, it's different because the house slaves were still, like I would say, probably treated better. But then you had the chattel slaves, which, American slavery was chattel. I mean, they had domestic slaves too,
but not like that. Like you said, the guys that worked the fields, the guys that built the roads, and
the people who worked the fields, and the ones that you really didn't want to do were like being sent to the mines because that was a death sentence. Yeah, but they needed their ore, man.
Yeah.
So who do you think was the ones working the mines?
Exactly.
Slaves. Those people got worked to death.
Oh, yeah. Little water and no food hardly. And if you got lucky and you were, like we were talking about, which you're probably leading into as far as the slaves, they could work their way out of slavery. But there was really only one way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, some of the slaves were actually like would teach the people's kids and shit.
Yeah.
Yep. Nemovir says if you were educated like the Greek, the rest worked mines and the farms. Yep.
Plain and simple.
The mines and the farms.
But yeah, I mean, but then you had like I said, they encountered warriors that they conquered. So what'd they do with them?
Here's the thing about, so if we're going to move on to Gladiators, right?
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that people,
that's the next one.
But one of the things that people talk about with Gladiators is like, oh, the Romans are so cruel. They force their slaves to fight. Here's the thing. When Daniele Bellelli was talking about this shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He said that historians now, they estimate it was probably between like 40 to 60% were actually slaves. Mm-hmm. But the rest of the people, they fucking signed up. They showed up at the Ludus. The Ludus is the school.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Dudes would show up, be like, yo, I want to be a fucking gladiator, baby. I'm down for it.
Yeah.
They wanted that glory.
Yeah.
It's
like the Olympians in Greece. The Olympians in Greece signed up for that just for the glory. There was nothing they were going to get out of it really other than glory.
The other thing is, a lot of these the scene in the movies, right? When the gladiator finally wins his freedom and they give him that wooden sword.
Yeah.
It's like your mark of freedom. You're free now. And the guy's like, yeah, I can go back. Nah, man.
No.
According to their records, the majority of the guys who got that wooden sword, they didn't leave.
Stayed there and kept fighting, didn't they?
No, they would stay. They were like, okay, cool, but I want to keep doing this. A lot of them, actually, a lot of them that retired, like very few of them would go back to their hometowns or their home villages.
Yeah.
A lot of them actually stayed behind and worked for the Ludus as like head trainers. because you had a steady paycheck.
Yep.
You know, you had all your food and lodging taken care of, health care. You had a good job. You had respect. Like a lot of them would just be like, nah, fuck it, I ain't leaving. They didn't want to leave because they didn't want to go back to some bumblefuck ass town.
Yeah.
And fucking shovel dirt for their wives and like 10 kids. Like,
if they even had that, because by that point, most of them were already gone. So.
Okay, Keith asks, didn't they have different fighting classes of gladiators, different fighting styles and weapons? Okay, so Daniele Bolelli, this dude, he breaks it down. Okay.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he goes deep into like, they even managed to find a program. You know, like those pro wrestling posters where you have like, you know, the title match or the title card, and then you got the mid card, you got your openers.
Yeah.
They found one of those programs, and they figured out like how these like events were like structured. So the way it worked was, these were all day affairs, right? People would show up, and you show up in the morning, right? At the Coliseum. And the morning, like the pre-lunch events, it's two things. It's just like prisoner fights with gladiators.
Gotcha.
Where you know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah. You got squash matches.
Yeah.
Your prelim squash matches.
The prelim squash matches, exactly. Yeah. The jobbers.
Yep.
So the majority of the people, the prisoners that they sent to the jobber matches, these were like people who were considered either enemies of the state, like, or these were like actual criminals, like they committed murder, you know?
Yeah.
So
I mean, this was their death sentence, really.
It was their death sentence, but the orator, right? The orator was like he was the announcer and the promoter at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? The orator would explain to them, like a lot of times he would explain to them their crimes, like to the crowd. Everyone would be booing his ass.
Hey, Jackie.
Yo, this motherfucker, he like murdered some innocent people.
Yeah.
You know?
He gets what he deserves.
Yeah,
man.
I want to see him get fucked up in a jobber match against a gladiator.
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't you? I'd be down for that.
100%. I'd be okay with that.
A lot of times it was people who were like considered enemies of the state or deserters or people who like betrayed the empire. And so you as a patriotic Roman, you're just like, man, fuck that guy.
Yeah, we want to see him get his ass.
Yeah, see him get his, you know?
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, you know, that, and it built patriotism in the units or in their people in their town as well. So
yeah. The other events in the morning were the hunter matches. The hunter matches it's actually pretty sad. It's the ones where they would take like lions and tigers and ship in all these like bears and wolves. And they had these like hunter class gladiators whose job it was to like fight animals.
Yeah.
And it was just a slaughter fest, like killing lions and tigers. And it was kind of sad because a lot of animals did needlessly. Like, I feel bad about that. Like,
well, yeah, and I can understand that, but
although
them guys didn't care.
Although people like there were a number of emperors, right, who would take like those whenever they would kill those animals, they would take the meat and like hand it out to like, poor people.
Yeah, but here's my question though, you know, they really the Roman Empire, did it actually ever hit India? Where were they getting the daggum the tigers from? First of all, I know there
were probably traders and dealers.
Could have been, because I really hate to see some of them guys trying to trap a lion or a tiger.
Like the Romans and the Chinese, they knew about each other. They have writings.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure there were. Yeah, I'm sure there were dealers.
The Huns are part of what ended up between the Huns and the Goths, are what really started bringing down the Roman Empire. You know, so
it was a bunch of things.
Oh yeah,
a bunch of things. Yeah,
that and inbreeding too.
There was a whole bunch of things. I'd say what brought them down more than the Huns and the Goths were just civil wars. That was way more destructive for their,
Yeah, well, they were too spread out. They couldn't effectively govern the amount of land they had. Just all there was to it. I mean, even Alexander the Great, his empire that he had was far and away bigger than the Roman Empire, but he was able to, well, I should say for about 10 years, I guess it is all he was able to maintain it. Of course, he passes away, and then it just falls into utter disrepair, and
the Romans come along and take over most of that
exactly,
shit.
Exactly, because they had strong leadership for a long time. But when they expanded too far, and then you started getting your Neros and your Caligulas and your nutcases running the daggum thing, it's going to happen. Just remember that quote. Those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it.
There's an argument to be made that like Nero and Caligula were not nearly as crazy as people would think.
Oh, no, they were a lot like foxes, I think.
I think there was a good counter argument that they go into as well.
Yeah, because quite frankly, if they hadn't have died the way they died,
well, you know why Caligula was so murderous?
Was that?
Well, here's the thing: like people, what they don't, you hear all these stories, right, about Caligula doing some fucked up shit in his court, being all evil and twisted to people.
Yeah,
but you have to realize Caligula in his time was actually extremely popular and beloved by the people. As a matter of fact, when he got assassinated, Rome itself, like the common class, almost broke out and rioted because they were so pissed that he got assassinated.
Well, it was the
because
same thing
the
with
common
Julius
man,
Caesar.
he was a populist.
Same thing with Caesar, Julius Caesar. That is, I mean, he was so popular, the Senate feared him. That's why they took him out.
The reason why Caligula was so murderous was because he was like that to the other senators.
Yeah.
But the reason why was because he blamed all the senators for, rightfully or wrongfully, he blamed all of them for orchestrating the assassination of his parents and his family. So he was like, he had
I can see that.
He
had a vendetta.
Blood, he had a vendetta.
He had a vendetta. Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Now, what about
the people? He was actually quite popular because during the gladiatorial games, he was known for taking all the meat of all the animals that were killed,
and handing
it out to the poor.
Yeah, so they could get food. Which is cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's obviously looked at differently through hindsight and the historical movies especially. I mean, obviously, everybody knows what Caligula was like, and poor Malcolm McDowell had to live that down forever.
Michelle Wilfong says he was evil. I'll tell you a really interesting story about Caligula before we continue. That was shared on actually Dan Carlin's Hardcore History.
Yeah.
There's a famous incident that was written down. This was from the point of view of like some like construction workers. So one of the things that Caligula gets criticized for is like all these outlandish like construction projects, like huge ass statues.
Yeah.
Like there was this big project to build this giant statue like right outside of town. It was like some massive project, right? And he had this bridge built and all this shit. And one of the things people levy at Caligula is like, oh, this guy was all crazy. He was like an egomaniac. He had all these statues built for him. And these, so one day these construction workers were on break who were building the statue, and they were just bullshitting, having lunch. And this guy starts making fun of Caligula and his need to have a statue. He's probably saying something like, oh man, that guy must have a small dick or something. Little did he know that Caligula was just inspecting the site and happened to be standing right behind him. And all the other construction workers were like, oh shit, dude. The guy turns around. He realizes what he's done. He's like, I'm going to die. According to what's written down, it said that Caligula actually started laughing and he like agreed with him and then walked away.
And see, that tells me that, of course, history is written by the winners. This is just the way it is. So whatever happened when he was assassinated, all his debauchery and stuff was written by those senators. And that's where his stuff. Now, you've got others, like you said, the guys, the peons, they see him differently because he didn't treat them like complete and utter shit. Like the rest of the
that's why people were so pissed off. He was assassinated by senators and the elite. So the common people were like, man, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
So Keith asked, was Caligula trained to fight when he was a kid, or am I thinking Hannibal from Carthage?
Actually, Caligula,
if you look at the backstory of Caligula, like if you had to think of an American equivalent of Caligula, I would say he's most like John F. Kennedy Jr. Okay, here's why. JFK Jr.
Yeah.
His dad is obviously JFK, right? One of the most iconic American figures in modern history. That was Caligula's dad. He was like this super awesome like war hero.
Yeah.
That everyone idolized, but then he died when Caligula was really young. So what happened when JFK got assassinated, right? You see that little shot of JFK Jr. as a little kid. Everyone's like, oh, you're feeling all sorry for him. And then he grows up and everyone's like, oh, man, look at what a stud this dude is. That's kind of Caligula's story.
Well, and, was it Keith there was saying that, though, but Hannibal was the same way, but Hannibal was born into
Hannibal was trained as a kid. Yeah, that dude was trained for war.
But he was in a warrior tribe, if you want to call it. He was like in the Spartans, if you want to get right down to it.
Yeah, no, his dad and his brothers were all like, war guys, soldiers, professional
it was
soldiers.
all about fighting. That's all they cared about, fighting and conquest.
Yeah.
So all right, Woo Rider. Okay. Woo Rider. Ron Killing. Yeah, okay.
So here's the thing, though, okay? So we're talking about the program, right? Those were those two things.
Yeah.
You know what's fucked up, though? What they would do for lunch. So apparently, after the morning events, right, the Hunter Games and the prisoner jobber matches.
Yeah.
The majority of the people in the crowd would fuck off for lunch. They would have like all these street vendors outside the Coliseum where people would like buy food and shit.
Yeah.
During the lunchtime shows would be these, I want to call them like torture plays, but they were comedy acts, but they were extremely fucked up. So let me give you an example of one, okay?
Okay.
According to Daniele Bolelli, there was an instance. So all of these torture plays, they were basically reenactments of like Greek myth stories.
Yeah.
Like, the backstory of the Minotaur?
No, I just knew that was folklore, or not folklore, but mythology from Greece.
So the Minotaur backstory is essentially the king of Minos had a queen.
Okay.
And this woman, had sex with a bull, like a just bestiality style.
Ew.
And gave birth to the Minotaur. That's where the Minotaur comes from.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's the actual Greek myth, right?
Yeah. I'd never.
So,
I just knew it was mythology.
The Romans in their lunchtime events, what they would do is they would reenact that story by taking a female prisoner that's condemned to die, have her tied down, and an actual bull goes into the middle of the arena and fucks her to death in front of the entire crowd.
Jesus, Rita. That's an intermission for your ass right there.
That was their intermission.
God.
Here's another example, okay? The Icarus story, right? The dude who flew too close to the sun?
Yep.
They would reenact the whole thing. The guy that, they would have him up on pulleys and ropes and have him fly around. But underneath, there would be a pit of live crocodiles.
Uh-huh.
And then the dude's narrating, right? The dude's narrating the Icarus story. But then for the part where his wings melt, they drop him in the crocodile pit. The whole crowd watches as this dude gets ripped to shreds. Everyone's cheering and laughing.
Nothing you can do about it. Yeah.
And that's their comedy show. That's their fucking comedy show.
Yeah, that's wild. I don't think I could deal with that one. So,
but apparently, most of the people in the arena would leave. Like the majority of people. Apparently, I'm guessing that most people would just rather have lunch instead and then watch that.
Yeah,
but that was their comedy intermission.
I think I'd just go out and give me a hot dog and be done with it. Okay.
Yeah. Now, once that is over and the whole crowd comes back after lunch, everyone's fed. It's now afternoon going into the evening. Now we're going into the main event. That's when you have the actual gladiator matches.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, but these are like the professionals versus the professionals, where you're like, oh shit, what the fuck's gonna happen when Gladiator, this dude, is gonna fight this guy? Oh man, I've been waiting for this fight for like months.
And this is Hogan versus who?
Hogan versus Andre and shit,
Yeah, or Hogan versus the Warrior, which now we don't even bring that.
That's where you have the real matches. But the thing is, right? It's just in a lot of ways, just like MMA and pro wrestling, what did they do before the match?
Yeah.
They cut the promos.
Yeah. They have to. So
They
they had to
cut-
come out and start talking and get the crowd
Yeah.
into it.
So Keith earlier was like, were there different types? Yeah. So there were different types. They did describe them, right? Like, how you've got the one with the trident and the net,
Yeah, yeah.
the retiarius, and then you
Okay.
had the scissors, the secutors. These were all the different types, right? Think of it as like, I don't know. In pro wrestling, you have like gimmicks.
Yeah.
But in MMA, UFC, you have like different. Well,
Different
not
fighting
now,
styles.
but in the beginning, you would have
different
like
styles.
different styles.
Yeah.
Grappler versus wrestler
Or
versus like
jiu-jitsu,
Muay Thai.
judo, Muay
Yeah.
Thai, and boxers. You had boxers in there too.
Yeah.
And regular
That's
grapplers.
that's
like
what
you
these
said,
were. They were
wrestlers.
basically different types, right?
Yeah.
And they were all armed differently. That was the main way that they were distinguished. The shield, how much armor they had. There was another type that was like one sword in each hand, akimbo style.
Yeah.
Right. But according to Daniele Bolelli, they would they would fight pair off like styles.
Yeah.
So if you're one of those dudes who had the trident and the net, you only fought other dudes with tridents and nets.
Oh, okay.
You wouldn't fight the sword guys with the shields. That was a separate league. The sword guys with the shields will only fight other sword guys with shields.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, see, I didn't know that part. I really didn't know that part. That was one you would think it'd be a free for all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, well, that actually makes it sound more humane if you want to get right down to it.
It's more like a sport.
Yeah. So they're really, and how many, if I'm not mistaken, honestly, in those situations, there wasn't a whole lot of times people actually died at that.
So that's the other thing. That was one of the big things that Daniele Bolelli mentions. When they look at all the known deaths, like what they can piece together and find, because there's a lot that they really can't find.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It's long gone. Yeah.
But what they found was like less than like a quarter of them ended in fatality, and usually those that ended in fatality were accidental.
Yeah, because they had respect for each other too while they were out there fighting.
Well, it was also the way that the whole thing was set up. Okay, so these events, they were run by the orators. I told you earlier, the orators, they're kind of the ring announcers, but they're also the promoters, right?
Yeah.
Everything comes out of the orator's pocket. They're paying for the promotions. They're like the Vince McMahons, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the thing. If a gladiator were to die at one of these orators events, the orator is responsible for paying back the ludus, like the school that they're from or the camp or whoever the owner is. He's got to pay him back the total value of that gladiator.
The one that died.
Which is really fucking expensive, especially if they're like high profile.
Yeah.
So it was in their interest to keep him alive.
Yeah.
It wasn't
definitely.
like how they make into movies where the gladiator wins one fight and everyone's like, oh, kill him. Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like that.
No. And the emperor was not there every day either. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like he was there to give him thumbs up, thumbs down every day or anything. Now, maybe there was some of those early on, earlier in the day, where you talk about the murders and stuff that were out there, and say one gets lucky and he wins it, or he's been knocked down, and then you got him deciding, hey, are we going to go and kill him, or we're going to just let him go into hard labor,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it just doesn't, it didn't make any sense for the longevity of it and for the actual theatrics of it at that time.
Well, and also the crowd had enough respect for the famous gladiators.
Yeah.
That even if they lost, they didn't want to see him die. They wanted to see him come back and do a rematch.
Try and do it again. Yeah. Much like we do with wrestlers nowadays.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
they said that the majority of the deaths were actually training accidents.
That wouldn't surprise me, because the training is where the most dangerous spot, because they don't know some of them just don't know how to handle the weapons yet. So one wrong move and hey, you're gone.
So,
So,
do you remember back in like the early 2000s when the UFC was first starting to pop off, and then in
yeah.
their opening of all of their events, they would have that Roman Gladiator.
Mm,
Like he's rubbing all that sand in the opening before the theme song hits, and
well,
people would
see,
say, "Oh, UFC is so much
you're in
like
that
yeah,
Rome. You're at in the 2000s where it was all now run by Dana White and actual UFC. So
yeah." It was
uh,
like the Fertitta brothers and
yeah,
Dana White.
because
Yeah, the old
I'm telling you
school.
right now, they didn't do that with the original black dark tape. So
No, this is like when Chuck and Randy were big.
yeah,
Yeah. So they would have like the Roman Gladiator theme song,
hmm
and then people would compare MMA to like gladiators. But I'm thinking here, after having listened to Daniel Bellelli's podcast and knowing everything I know about gladiators now,
yeah,
I'm thinking, what if it was less like MMA and more like pro wrestling, where you would have storylines, you would have gimmicks, and you would
yeah.
have predetermined matches? I'm thinking a lot of these matches were fixed
It very well could have been. It very well could have been.
to like lead a storyline, because you would
Yeah,
have instances where they would do like a match, the gladiators would cut a promo, but they would do it in character as if they were like characters from a story in history or mythology.
yeah.
Like
I
one
mean,
gladiator would come out pretending like he's Zeus or some shit.
it's all this.
Yeah.
It literally, they're planning for the next payday. Every time somebody goes out there, they're planning for that next payday.
And they're doing like predetermined matches.
And then they're not going to sit there and give away the big ending until it's a, let's just say, pay-per-view type thing, a big shindig going on, or a big card, because you're not going to have the same level every day,
Yeah.
so you're going to have a big match and big gladiator
You
time.
want that Hogan and
Yeah.
Andre the Giant.
I would say
event,
once,
man.
probably every 3 months or something, you would think
That's
there.
how you make that money, yo.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
they pack that Coliseum, and that's, 250, 300,000 people crammed in that area trying to watch that. Yeah. They're just printing money is what they're doing.
And apparently, these gladiators, they lived pretty good lives. Like if you were famous as a gladiator, they lived pretty good lives outside the arena.
Yeah.
They got sponsorship deals. They got like product endorsements.
Mm-hmm.
They are having sex with tons of women, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, they're living the life of a celebrity. They were probably looked at like, what was there was an old saying, somebody asked Babe Ruth back in the 20s because he got paid more than the president of the United States, and that was like $80,000 or some crud like that for that year that he was playing. Well, why do you think you should get paid more than the president of the United States? He looked right at him and said, because I had a better year than he did.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Never was like a lot of ladies paid for the privilege.
Yeah.
They found like in the archaeological excavations of their like Luddites.
Yeah.
They found graffiti where they're talking about like it's like a frat house graffiti where they're like,
oh wow,
oh, this gladiator fucked like this lady and that lady and all these ladies.
Hey,
that was the life they led.
They're going to give it to you.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? When I mentioned earlier when they would give the wooden sword to the slave for their freedom.
Yeah, they didn't want to
leave.
leave.
Was like, fuck that, I ain't leaving.
I'll take my freedom, but I'm still going to sit here and fight.
Yeah, I'm staying.
I'll keep bringing you money in as long as you keep paying me money and taking care of me.
That's why dudes were signing up, because they were so fucking tired of living like as a peasant in the countryside.
Well, yeah.
They want to get paid. They want to get laid.
Yeah. Once you get a little older, or something like that, of course, old for them is in their 40s, so you get to your 40s, hey, it's time to go out into the countryside and just kind of chill, Earlier on, I think, who was it? It was either Keith or Surreal. I can't remember which one it was. It may have been even Nemo. I can't remember which. But they said they'd put the Ultimate Warrior over Russell Crowe any day. Well, hell, I'd put anybody over Russell Crowe any day.
Can you think of other comparisons of like how like pro wrestling matches up with Roman gladiators?
Well, physique right off the bat. I'm just going to say physiques, because all they care about in a lot of pro wrestling, especially in the 80s.
Mhm.
If you weren't a big built burly sucker,
Well, the look was important.
yeah, it was all about the look. And I bet money that was the same thing with them. They didn't want any
Well, that's why their armor looks the way it does.
yeah.
If you think about it, if you think about their actual armor, it doesn't make any sense, right?
No,
Because it
doing a
only
body
covers
shaping,
like
aren't they?
parts of their body, but then
Yep.
other parts are completely exposed. This is
Mhm.
pure gimmick. This is pure
Yeah.
like just look.
I mean, look at the thighs in the drawings alone, right there. Look at the thighs on the lower two left ones, and or all of them on the bottom. Anyone with exposed thighs, look at the rips that they've got drawn into it. Okay, then look at the guy up there in the middle. What the hell is that called? Haplomachus?
Haplomachus, yeah.
Yeah, you know what he looks like? You know that Mongolian wrestling that they do in the fields and stuff in Mongolia?
Yeah.
He looks like one of those guys.
Hmm.
Now they're not ripped. They don't have six packs and stuff, but I bet money they're stronger than dang oxes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm willing to bet a lot of these people were.
Yeah, I mean,
So yeah, for me, this is fascinating stuff. I wish I just could find out like who was like the Michael Jordan of the
at that time,
Gladiators.
yeah, because they don't have any names anymore.
That we don't know.
I don't think they even know any names, do they?
Apparently, this is like not 100% verified, but there are like stories and rumors flying around that apparently there was at one point like a female gladiator that was just fucking everybody up.
I'm okay with that. As long as she could fight, she could take them out. Hey,
if that was true, man, I would have loved to have like go into a time machine and see that shit.
Yeah, just see what she was doing to them, huh?
Like to see how good they were. Like the ones who were like super good. I wanted to just see like how fucking unbeatable they were. Like if they had to go up against like a regular soldier with the same weapons, like I just want to see the difference in skill level,
Oh yeah. Because she's probably more finesse and is taking them out, kind of like the way hell, look at it at comic book movies.
Mm-hmm.
Freaking Black Widow. I mean, honestly, think about it. That's all smarts and finesse and knowing how to use leverage.
I mean, that's a good point that you bring up actually, because if we are the modern day Romans, like if modern America is a reincarnation of ancient Rome, then our gladiators are probably going to be like the MCU comic book superheroes in the movies.
Yeah.
All the kids look up to them.
Yep.
They sell all the merchandise. Super famous.
Oh yeah. And
I mean, they're not actually competing live, but I mean,
no, but
that
still,
would be that
wouldn't make no difference to kids
in our mental point of view.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's all choreographed.
These guys were like household names, man.
I mean, all their stuff's choreographed, but you think about it, people like Chuck Norris, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and I know Jackie Chan is all choreographed really now, but he does his own choreography at least. But those guys are legit fighters. Michael J. White, legit fighter.
Mm-hmm.
These guys would be what the kids from that time would be looking up to, especially Michael J. White. If you've ever seen Michael J. White in an actual fight and his actual, competitive fighting, the dude's a beast. He is. I mean, it's just like what he is so fast for such a big man. Billy Blanks was the same way. Billy Blanks, with kickboxing, he was a beast. So, I mean, Dennis the Terminator Alexio, there's another one. He doesn't get kicked in the thigh twice, and get his leg completely broken in two just about in fights, and he'd be legendary.
I know Dennis Alexio.
Dennis Alexio was when they said the Terminator.
For guys of you who don't know who Dennis Alexio was, he was the guy who played Van Damme's brother in the movie Kickboxer.
Yep. The one that got his back
crippled
broke
by Tong Po.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny and hilarious when you think about it, because he was the one that was at the actual badass fighter. His acting was pretty decent in that movie, though. I gotta say.
Yeah, he did, but he didn't have to do a whole lot either.
Acting.
Though.
Yeah,
he didn't have to do a whole lot.
It's a shame we didn't see him in more movies, but
I
like
don't
that.
think he wanted to do it. I think I'd have to ask him. That dude. I saw a bunch of his fights though,
Hmm.
and same thing with Randall Tex Cobb. Cobb was a boxer that got best known for being able to take the wickedest punches in the world.
Yeah.
But when he got into the actual kickboxing side of it, he became a world champion quick because he knew how to finesse it with his kicks and such. And he was just good at kickboxing versus regular boxing. And if y'all don't know who that is, go watch the movie Uncommon Valor with Gene Hackman and Patrick Swayze and Randall Tex Cobb, and you'll see who I'm talking about.
The modern action movies are also, well, that's the difference, right? Because we can sit here and say, oh my God, so many ways Rome was so much similar to America, but in so many other very significant ways, they were different.
It's not. Yeah.
It's not
a lot
at all.
harder. A lot harder than what we are.
It's very different.
And I don't mean hard as in hard living. I mean hard as in rock hard people. They had to be tough.
What are some major differences, I would say? For those of you who are unfamiliar, like if I had to compare and contrast Roman governance versus American governance, one big difference is that, well, one similarity, it was almost a two-party system. Not officially, but it kind of was, just like how America is, like with the right and the left.
Yep.
You had the very pro, Senate and the pro-traditional side, and then you have the populist side, right? But the populist sides, I mean, that could seem more noble, but a lot of the guys who were running that party,
they were thugs,
corrupt as shit.
Yeah, they were thugs. Yeah. They were your mafiosos.
Yeah, so you could kind of see them as the Republicans and the Democrats, right? In a lot of ways. The one big difference I would say between the Roman system and the American system, basically, the ancient Roman government is what the American government would look like if there was no third branch, if there was no Supreme Court.
Yeah. Yeah, you got
if it was just the executive and legislative branch.
Yep.
That's what the Roman government looked like. I think our founding fathers, they kind of figured, when they saw the Roman example, because they were taking they were paying attention to what the Romans did, and they're like, we like this and we like that. Let's not do that.
Yeah,
let's try to learn from that mistake. You know, and I think one of the big takeaways that they were trying to learn from the Roman mistake was there was no third branch of government. There was no Supreme Court.
Yeah, there was nobody to check and balance any of the other two. Yeah.
When you see that whole all the civil wars that broke out, because that's the thing that really tore Rome apart at the end of the day. It was the civil wars.
Yep.
And if there had not been a third mediating body like the Supreme Court to kind of just put their foot down and be like, nah,
Yeah. Well, and like you said, all those civil wars, they really weren't even truly civil wars. They were just outlying colonies, if you want to call it that, just saying, okay, you can't control us out here. We're controlling our stuff.
That was another big difference with the Marian reformations. This guy Marian came along, or Marius came along and basically redid the whole system of how the military was structured.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because prior to before Marius came along, they were all just you would just get people, what do you call them? Not enlistees, but not draftees, but
true.
They were just people from the farm, the countryside, right?
Yeah,
war breaks out.
You're drafted. They're draftees.
Yeah, they're draftees, right? Yeah. They're enlistees, but then they go back they go back home after the campaign's over.
Afterwards, you go back home until you're called on again.
Marius comes along, and he's like, nah, we need professional fucking soldiers where it's their job to be a soldier, right? And so he basically makes it up so now he creates a separate soldier class, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The problem, and I think our military kind of takes a lot from that. We have professional soldiers.
Yep. Right? That's exactly what they are.
Yeah.
All volunteer, because you know what? Volunteer army / soldiers are going to fight a hell of a lot more than what you going out and drafting somebody to come in and fight for you.
Right.
And they figured that. I'm not saying anything bad about the Vietnam vets. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of them that were drafted in, they didn't want to go, and then you could tell in the way they reacted to it. You had other guys that just they did it because that was their job, and a lot of the ones even drafted. But there were some that would be like, "No, I didn't sign up for this type thing. Y'all grab me." And we had it in Desert Shield, Desert Storm too. We had some that tried to be conscientious objectors at the last second. Same thing in 2003. So I mean, you get it every time, but in an all volunteer army, you know what you're signing up for. The draft side of it, they're getting drug into it because it just is what it is. They were getting drug into it.
I think the real downfall of that system at the end of the day, which thankfully I think America's like kind of saw that and was like, yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Was that you had this class of professional soldiers, but they were loyal to their generals more than they were loyal to the state.
Yeah. Yeah. And
that's why you would have like Julius Caesar going to war with Pompey. Because Julius Caesar had his soldiers who were professional soldiers, but over the state, they were loyal to Julius Caesar.
Yeah, because they were but he was an active commander of the forces too, whereas a lot of those like Caligula and Nero and these ones we keep talking about, they weren't. They were not active leaders of the armies.
Right. Well, I mean, they tried to like lead campaigns, or tried to be seen to be leading campaigns.
Yeah, but they're not, and the soldiers knew that.
Well, it was also because by the time because Julius Caesar he wasn't the first emperor. He was kind of like the guy who he was like George Washington.
It all.
People say George Washington was the first president, but he really wasn't a president. He was the general who established who helped establish the government. But he never had to like administer like 4 terms, like in the White House.
He did actually. He actually was there from 17. I think it was. Let's see, 89. I think it was 1789 to 1794 because he died in 1799.
Yeah.
So, but it would essentially been a.
But it was very different for what it meant to be a president back then.
Exactly,
for him.
And he had to establish
even in like
everything.
Abe Lincoln's time compared to like now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'll always consider George Washington probably our greatest president because he's the one that established everything. He's the one he had to navigate all that crap after the Revolutionary War and make everything kind of stick. And then you had, after that, the British thought they'd come back in War of 1812. Now you're talking about the Madisons having to deal with it. You know what I mean?
I'd say he was definitely our greatest like military leader, and we needed it. Like when America really needed it, because we're the underdogs. Yeah. It's not very often in our history that where America was like the underdog militarily.
Oh yeah. We were in World War I, and that was because quite frankly, we didn't have our own army.
Well, we came in late in World War I though.
Yeah.
We came in kind of late. So
but if you hadn't had Pershing pushing for the All-American Division, we would have never had we would have just been augmentees to the French.
Yeah, but after World War II, it became very rare for America to be the
I mean, because World War II was what established us as a superpower, period. It really did.
But yeah, that was like one of the major downfalls for the Roman military because, they were loyal to the generals over.
Nemo's right, really, because if I'm not mistaken, he's right. Julius Caesar was not technically an emperor. He didn't ever called himself.
No, it was Octavius.
Yeah, it was Octavius. He's right.
Caesar Augustus.
Who changed the name to Augustus.
Actually.
Yeah, it was his nephew. Yeah, and he's the one that took out Mark Antony and Cleopatra.
Right.
But that was another one though. Octavius / Augustus was another one leading from the front. He was on the ground with those troops, and they would have done anything for him.
Yeah. Caligula tried to do a military campaign. He tried to ride up on in like Britain and shit.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like by then, everything was so different. Like there wasn't really much of a war to be had, and he kind of just went back home.
Yeah. I mean,
but it is what it is.
Yeah, that's all you can do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're it's funny looking back on it from what we see, just like you were saying with that lady you had on the other podcast. You look back on that stuff and people try to apply our 20th or 21st century ideals and values. We try to force that onto those historical areas, and you're like,
Yeah.
hey, come to think of it, Eddie Murphy said it right when I think it was in Raw, where he said, you know, first guy off the damn ship, you know, he looked right at the guy and said, hey, pick that cotton. He said, suck my dick. Then about 50 whips came in and nailed him. And the guys behind him said, hey, yeah, we'll take care of it. Don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like they did it willingly. I mean, honestly. But
another really interesting difference was that the Romans, they didn't have police.
No. Legionnaires.
Like it was a foreign concept to them. There was no police force.
Because they didn't have real crime. Not real crime like we have now. You had your murders, you had your stuff like that, but
you had some crime.
Yeah, but they didn't have to have somebody come and investigate it. Normally it was caught like within, you know, minutes of it happening.
Well, and also a lot of it was privatized. Like they would use like private militias. Like the governors would have their own militias.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was basically like security guards for hire who would just who were paid for by the local governors.
Yeah.
But I mean, so much corruption can happen from that, you know. It was kind of interesting to think, man, I wonder what life would be like if there was just no police.
At all. I'd almost be scared around this place nowadays, though.
What?
No police around, no threat of something being able to be. Some of these people around the United States nowadays, they'd take that as, hey, it's free reign. I can do it. It's full blown purge now. Let's go.
Yeah, but you also have to consider that instead of police, your local township would have a private militia that didn't need to abide by any letter of the law. 2, didn't even need to abide by any like basic human rights.
Yeah.
They could literally do whatever the fuck they wanted with you.
Yeah. Period. You know? And if you're caught and you're deemed to be a bad guy, and
they'll just
you're
like
proven to what
chop
they
off a body part and walk away.
Or they're gonna hang you.
Yeah.
They're gonna string you up and leave you there.
Yep.
So anywho.
Yeah. So is there anything else we need to talk about, Randy? We're going for an hour.
We didn't talk about anything about wrestling really, but okay.
Oh,
I still got to
want to talk about some wrestling stuff.
I still got to catch up on what happened last night. Still, I haven't looked at it.
What happened last night?
I don't know yet. I haven't looked. That's what I just told you. I didn't look yet. They're not making me want to watch a whole lot now.
So, what have you been thinking about this whole saga? Like, what's been going on with WWE lately? I've been kind of out of the loop for the last couple of weeks. Fill me in.
You heard about Jay dropping the title, right?
So, who did he lose to?
Gunther. He lost it back to Gunther.
Gunther won it back?
Yeah. And not just a little bit. He tapped him out into a sleeper hole. In the middle of the ring.
He beat him clean. This was during a Raw?
Yeah, on Raw last week to be exact.
Why do you think they took it from him?
The word I'm hearing is because they're getting ready for Goldberg's retirement match, and they want it to be against Gunther, and they want it to be for the title. Why? I don't know. I hope Gunther chokes his ass completely the hell out.
I hope Gunther fucking chops him. I
want him to make his. I want him to make Goldberg's chest look like fire, just because you know, quite frankly, a 55, 60-year-old man shouldn't be coming in there dictating to the actual rest of the locker room just because he wants a retirement match. I don't give a damn. Okay.
See, here's the thing. On the one hand, I kind of like Goldberg, but on the other hand, I kind of don't.
Yeah. They're trying to play it, and I don't know if it's Triple H causing this, made the call. I don't, you know, people always say, well, Triple H just screwed this up. Hey, it could be worse. You could have Vince still booking, okay? Because quite frankly, the action has been a lot better, but you know me, I haven't been on board with Jey Uso as the damn world champion since day one. So,
well, they didn't build him up right. I feel like they could still. They just got to build him up right.
But his moves are not believable. I mean, the top rope splash is fine. The super kicks are fine. His spear is the worst fucking spear in the professional wrestling industry. Okay,
Braun Breaker's got some nice looking spears.
I'm gonna tell you right now,
seen those shits online.
Him and Roman Reigns are the best to me right now.
No, Braun Breaker like fucking rolls and flips out of it.
Yeah, and
Like
then
the
he
way
gets
he
that.
lands and then he rolls, I'm like, good God, that is a beautiful
Yeah.
spear.
That's why they're
Good
setting him up
God.
for something big. Oh, and did you
Yeah.
hear? I just they signed Hikuleo. For people who don't know, that's Tamatonga's brother, the son of Haku, another son of Haku, I should say. He's been signed to the WWE for probably close to a year now, but they haven't brought him on. They hadn't brought him out or anything. Supposedly, he got out on the main event a while back, like earlier in the week or some crap like that. I'm like sitting there thinking to myself, you got a 7-foot tall Hikuleu who is so well known in Japan that you had sitting on the shelf for a year almost, and you're gonna put him out and bring him out on that. He needs to come out with Tamatonga and Tongaloa and say that they're the real bloodline with Haku. I would absolutely lose it over that. But they didn't do it. They just brought him out in some BS little match, the way I understand it. I got to read some more on it, but still, I'm like, you guys have just blown a golden opportunity then, because he would have been a beast to go against damn Jacob Fatu.
So what's been going on with Cena?
Well, I don't know. He did something last night. I know Cody Rhodes was on the thing. I know he was.
He's still feuding with Cody. So his thing with Randy is over.
Yeah, I mean, his next match is going to be against. Actually, his next match is going to be against CM Punk. But they tried to say CM Punk, he's going to get him at Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia, because CM Punk has always refused to work Saudi Arabia. So he's trying to push him into that, and we'll see. I don't know if he'll go or not. I don't know. So we'll see. That one, like I said, I can take or leave that. They had R-Truth come out on Monday night, after showing back up on Money in the Bank. And I'm just like, well, you brought him back, had him cut his hair, and now half the problem is, he's still a 50-something-year-old guy. He can still have good matches. He could be a good, but what endeared him was his R-Truth character and the goofiness. That's what endeared him to everybody.
Yeah. So he's being all serious now?
It looked like they're trying to be serious, and I'm like, that's not going to work. If they write him like that, it's not going to work. Because his character is what gets him over. We'll see. We'll see how it works out. But actually, Nemo, yeah, Braun Breaker still does a Frankensteiner. He'll do it. I've seen him do it from the top rope. But
so what's going on in the chat?
Oh no,
I haven't watched wrestling since Stone Cold and Vince. Sorry for my repeat comments. I don't have the unlimited.
He kept having.
His phone was acting up. Hey man,
yeah,
it happens to the best of us, my friend.
Oh yeah,
it happens to the best of us
all the time.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's like I said, it's been kind of light. I mean, AEW's had more action this last week or two. But other than that, I mean, I don't know where. I just can't quite put my finger on where AEW is trying to go. I don't. They're all over the place, really. So I keep watching. I keep checking them out and stuff, but I don't watch the full shows anymore because, quite frankly, I just don't want to hear Shivani that much, honestly. But
does he bug you?
It's just one of those. It's okay. Don't get me wrong, but when there's nothing really going on, and him. I think Taz is still doing the commentary too. But when they're doing their commentary, and I'm sitting there like, okay, that's just, I don't care about these people in the ring, and you're not making me care about these people in the ring. You know what I mean? That's what it ends up being. And I mean, as much as I hate to admit it, the Jon Moxley stuff is probably the most, it's the most entertaining because, quite frankly, the stuff with the Death Riders and the Young Bucks and all that crap, that whole bit, you got Swerve Strickland, Hangman Page, the Ops, which is Powerhouse Hobbs, Samoa Joe, and just whoever the other kid, Hook, I think it is, or whatever it is. But you got them, you got
Keith
several others.
Wouldn't be surprised if Truth turns heel.
I would love to see that because, quite frankly,
that would be interesting. Actually, I'd watch. I'd be here for that.
Some of his best work in the WWE was done when him and the Miz were the Awesome Truth. They were freaking great as a tag team. Okay. But with the other ones, like I said, they're taking it pretty much everybody other than MJF in the Hurt Business and putting them all into one group. So I'm like, I don't know where they're going with it. I really don't. It's kind of confusing. And of course, everybody now between WWE and AEW are trying to get the Mexico, the luchas involved into everything. So
I think I might tonight watch that Worlds Collide like little pay-per-view because I got Peacock now.
Oh yeah, did you watch? You missed it?
I missed it, but I can watch it like because I got Peacock.
Get ready because it's got a lot of action in it. I mean,
oh boy, I know what I'm doing after this.
I love the luchas when they really get going. When they really get going, you're like, how the hell do you do that? How the hell do you do that?
All right. Well, I think because now I'm in the mood to play video games and watch some wrestling. I don't know about you, Randy. Are we cool? Are we cool to kill it?
I'm good with you whenever you're ready.
All right, folks. So I hope you enjoyed this little conversation about wrestling and gladiators. And now I'm going to play this theme song, and then we're going to fuck off.
Bye. See you, bye.
Every day Donny thinks about ancient Rome. Ponders the topic though Korea's his home. He'd love to go back to watch gladiators fight. Just like Hogan and Andre, we battled tonight. Gladiators and pro wrestling. It's our lust for blood we're expressing. Gladiators and pro wrestling. Violence is fun, don't be stressing. Rome is just a retarded USA. Donny can use that word, it's okay. Randy knows sports, but does he know ancient Rome? Or about the most violent sport ever known? Gladiators and pro wrestling. It's our lust for blood we're expressing. Gladiators and pro wrestling. Violence is fun, don't be stressing. Watch some brutality. A wholesome time for the whole family. Don't be squeamish, this shit's not even real. They're not real people, they barely can feel.